Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story that's going to make you question everything you think you know about family, trust, and what it really means to be a father. Because sometimes the strongest bonds aren't made of DNA, they're made of something much more powerful. And what happened next? Well, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Imagine driving over 100 miles every single weekend, spending thousands on gas, just to see your baby girl. You signed the birth certificate. You changed her diapers. You were there for her first steps. But then one day you find out she might not even be yours. This isn't some movie plot, this is Scotty's real story. And trust me, what happened in that courtroom? Nobody saw it coming. You know those moments that completely change someone's life? Well, this is one of those stories. It's about a guy who gave everything to be a dad only to have his whole world turned upside down. Let me take you back to where it all started. Scotty Rasmus was just a regular guy with a pretty normal life. He had a decent job, lived in a small town, and like many of us, he dreamed of having a family someday. Then he got the news that would change everything. His ex-girlfriend, Miss Miller, was pregnant. Now, most guys might freak out hearing their ex is pregnant, but not Scotty. He was over the moon. He'd always wanted to be a dad. And even though things weren't perfect with Miss Miller, he was ready to step up and do whatever it took. But here's where things get complicated. Right from the start, Miss Miller started saying some pretty heavy stuff. She kept telling Scotty he wasn't the father. But instead of backing away, Scotty did something pretty incredible. He decided to be there anyway. Let me paint you a picture of what this guy went through. Every single weekend, rain or shine, Scotty would hop in his car and drive 160 miles. That's about 3 hours each way, just to see little Zaylee. Think about that for a second. That's 6 hours of driving, just for a chance to spend a few hours with his daughter. And we're not talking about a one-time thing here. This went on for months. He was burning through gas money like crazy, probably went through a set of tires or two, but he kept showing up. Why? Because that's what dads do. But it wasn't just the driving. Scotty was doing everything he could think of to be a good father. He was paying child support without anyone forcing him to. He showed up at doctor's appointments. He was there in the delivery room when Zaylee was born. He even signed the birth certificate, which, by the way, is a pretty big legal deal. Now, remember how I mentioned Miss Miller kept saying he wasn't the father? Well, that wasn't even the worst part. She started making it harder and harder for Scotty to see Zaylee. She'd cancel visits at the last minute, after he'd already driven those 3 hours. She'd make up excuses why he couldn't come over. It was like she was trying to push him away, but Scotty just kept coming back. And get this, she actually started telling people that Scotty only wanted to see Zaylee for the tax benefits. Yeah, because apparently driving 320 miles round trip every weekend and spending thousands on gas is a great way to save money on taxes, right? But here's what makes this story even crazier. While all this was going on, Scotty had this nagging doubt in the back of his mind. See, he and Miss Miller didn't have the most stable relationship. There had been some trust issues, some infidelity, the kind of stuff that makes you lie awake at night wondering. And Miss Miller wasn't exactly being subtle about it. She straight up told him there was another guy around the time Zaylee was conceived. Can you imagine carrying that knowledge around? Every time Scotty looked at Zaylee, every time she called him daddy, there was this voice in his head wondering if it was all real. But here's the thing about Scotty, he kept showing up anyway. Because in his mind, being a dad isn't just about DNA. It's about being there. It's about showing up when it's hard. It's about loving that little girl no matter what. The whole situation was like a pressure cooker though, and something had to give. After months of back and forth accusations and drama, they ended up in court. And not just any court, they went on one of those TV court shows where they do DNA tests and air all the dirty laundry in front of millions of people. Now picture this scene, you've got Scotty sitting there, probably the most nervous he's ever been in his life. So Miss Miller's there too, looking pretty confident. Judge Lake is holding those DNA test results in his hands, and the whole room is dead silent. Then comes the moment of truth. Judge Lake opens the envelope and boom, Scotty is not the father. The courtroom just exploded. Miss Miller started going off, yelling and carrying on like she just won some kind of prize. But if you were watching Scotty in that moment, you saw something completely different. You saw a man's heart break right there on national television. Because here's the thing about being a dad, it's not just something you do, it's something you become. For months, Scotty had been Zaylee's daddy. He'd been there for her first words. or first steps, all those precious moments you can never get back. And in the space of about 5 seconds, with just a few words from Judge Lake, all of that changed. But you want to know the really messed up part. Even after finding out Zaylee wasn't his, Scotty's first thought wasn't about himself. It wasn't about all the money he'd spent or all those hours on the road. His first thought was about Zaylee and how this was going to affect her. That's the thing about real fathers, they put their kids first, even when it hurts. Even when those kids aren't technically theirs. Even when the whole world is telling them to just walk away. This whole story really makes you think about what it means to be a parent. Is it about DNA? Is it about whose name is on the birth certificate? Or is it about something deeper than that? Something about love and commitment, and showing up even when it's hard. Scotty's story isn't unique. There are guys out there right now going through similar situations. Maybe they're driving those long hours, dealing with those same doubts, fighting those same battles. And maybe some of them are asking themselves if it's all worth it. If you ask Scotty, even knowing how it all turned out, I bet he'd tell you it was. Because for those few months, he got to be somebody's daddy. He got to experience that pure, unconditional love that only a parent knows. And even though it ended in heartbreak, those moments were real. The truth is, sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that don't have a happy ending. Sometimes there's no neat bow to tie everything up with, no lesson learned that makes all the pain worthwhile. Sometimes it's just about acknowledging that life can be messy and unfair, and the best we can do is try to handle it with grace. But you know what? Maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe it's not about whether Scotty was Zaylee's biological father. Maybe it's about the fact that when faced with uncertainty, he chose love. When given the chance to walk away, he chose to stay. When it would have been easier to give up, he chose to keep fighting. In the end, that DNA test might have said Scotty wasn't Zaylee's father, but for those precious months, he was something even more important. He was her daddy. Thank you for watching this real-life story about paternity fraud shared by our subscriber Scotty. His experience highlights the importance of being cautious and discerning when entering relationships. The consequences of rushing into relationships without proper awareness can be life-altering. We share these stories to help others learn from others' experiences and make informed decisions. If you found this content valuable, please subscribe to our channel for more insights about navigating relationship challenges and protecting yourself from deception.